If you stop PEDs at some point in the future, will you lose every gain you made while on them? I'm going to answer that question. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show, weekly question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Whatever's on your mind, bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, diet, training, supplementation, it is all on the table. We welcome you in on the 9th day of April in the year 2025. Glad to have you aboard. We're going to take questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app, from our Instagram page, from our YouTube community page, which has been very active. But Dave, before we go to the questions, I did want to give you an opportunity. The JUMBO PALUMBO Documentary launching last week, gotten a lot of great views on, a lot of great feedback, a lot of great reception to it. If you wanted to give a moment to, address those that have gotten an opportunity to watch the documentary and those who have not, what they may be missing out on.
Overwhelmingly, we've gotten very positive reviews on it. People seem to like it. I've been getting a lot of people telling me they want more. This was good, but we want to know, how you got to where you are. We want to know the past, and that's something I do want to do at some point. I don't know if Alexi wants to do it, our filmmaker, or if someone else wants to do it. It would require obviously interviewing a lot of people. I should probably start making my list of all the people who throughout the years I've grown up with and who know me and who would be necessary to interview in a documentary.
All the dirt on you. Ha ha ha.
And I say this all the time. I have friends that have photographic memories. They tell me stuff that we did back in the 90s. I don't even remember the stories. Matter of fact, as they're saying it comes back vaguely, but they're giving me details. Maybe just because I've done a lot since then, but these guys remember every detail. That's the people you want to interview for a documentary like that. The guys that can give you the stories. My friend Mike Popkin, who I went to kindergarten with, he can tell you everything right through, college with me, basically, of every story and every little nuance of it. So I am a poor historian of myself. It would be better if we got other people to tell the story, and then I can kind of fill in the gaps, after all these people are interviewed. So I think that would be something good. But I think this was very well received because it was entertaining. It kind of like gives you an update of what I'm doing now, what I'm going through with the divorce and everything like that. And, it showed a lot of vulnerability, which I'm not comfortable doing because I'm kind of like one of these emotionally closed people. But I think people enjoyed that to see that I wasn't a robot and that I was, that I'm a human being. And I have downs and ups and stuff like that too. And it's how you get through it that defines who you are. And so, thank you for all the positive comments. I don't read the comments, but I had a lot of people reach out to me and give me a lot of positive feedback on it, and they really enjoyed it, and they want more. So I guess we did something good. As we used to do those day in the life of Dave Palumbo videos a lot back in the day, and I think people really enjoyed that. And I have to try to do more of that because I do have very busy days, so people probably would be entertained by some of the insanity that goes on in my day. So. If we could if anyone out there lives in my area and is a video person and wants a job, let me know.
So there you go. Again, if you haven't already seen it, we'll put the link right in the first line of the article description. The JUMBO PALUMBO Documentary, very well done. Shout out to Alexei, did a great job with this. And if we can get him back out here from the United Kingdom, we'll shoot some more features and we can make a second part of the documentary. But we go right into the questions. The first two questions on the show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question. This is a good one. This is one that when I was reading it to you, you're like, oh yeah, that's what Dorian said. So the question is about The question is about a former Mr. Olympia, but you detected that it was Dorian, who once stated that once we stop PEDs, we lose all of our gains over a short period of time. However, I remember you watching a video where you stated that in order to drop below 260, you were nearly starving yourself. So what is the truth?
Yeah, what I found was that, and I think a lot of bodybuilders will test this. Look, if you go off anabolics, and you don't take any kind of PCT or hormone replacement, you're going to lose a lot. And you don't continue to eat and train, you're going to lose your gains. There's no doubt about that. But we're talking about a different situation. The situation I'm talking about is you decide I don't want to take I don't want to do cycles anymore. I'm not at an age where or even if you're younger and you just decide I don't want to do it anymore. Okay, you can maintain your gains. Okay, if you eat right, you keep your 6 meals per day, 5-6 meals per day. You still train at the gym. You get enough sleep. In other words, you take your supplements. You do everything that you normally would. You can maintain a good level of muscle. Now, you're not going to lose all your gains. Will you lose something? Yeah, a little bit. When I went from now, I stayed on hormone replacement when I went off. In 2004, when I said, all right, I had enough. I'm not going to compete anymore. I said, I'm not taking any more anabolics. So I just started taking 200 milligrams of testosterone a week, and I did that for about 10 years, actually. And that's what I meant by, because I was still eating 5-6 times a day, and I was training as well as I could, still as heavy as I could, with, my usual Dave Palumbo workouts, high intensity, lower volume. And I wasn't really losing much. And matter of fact, I was still guest posing for many years. I couldn't even believe how many guest postings I was still getting. And I thought I was small, because I wasn't 285 anymore off season. I was walking around at 250, but 250 is, very lean is still a good look, I guess, for guest posers. And that back in the mid 2000s, they still were hiring guest posers back then. So, I found it very hard to get down. I wanted to get my weight down because my blood pressure was a little high. So literally I had to cut back my food intake. I had to lower the weights a little bit that I was lifting. And slowly but surely, I whittled myself down. But I wanted to get smaller. So if I didn't want to get smaller and I wanted to stay bigger, I could have stayed bigger. Now, the question is, when I went when I went off hormone replacement in about 2013, when I was trying to have my kids, I still was not trying to get bigger. So I wasn't eating. I was only eating like 3 meals a day, 3-4 meals a day, the max at this point. So, and I still didn't really lose any weight, even on nothing, even on just on HCG. So I truly believe you can maintain muscle mass if you eat right. Assuming you got the muscle from the steroids, you can maintain a lot of that. It's always was the old adage, don't do a cycle, because as soon as you go off the cycle, you're going to lose all your gains. And that's why guys would never go off, because they were literally afraid that if I went off for 10 weeks, that I would lose everything I had gained for the last 4 years. And that's just not the case. As a matter of fact, I used to look great in the off season. When I would go off for my 10-week cycle every year, I was at the peak of my powers. I would get a little deflated. I thought I didn't look good, but no one else noticed. No one else said, hey, well, you look small, Dave. I never got that comment. As a matter of fact, I used to get people thinking I looked bigger because I was leaner, because you don't hold as much water when you're off steroids. So I don't buy into that. I think it's the same mentality that people have. Oh, these women say to me, I can't use Cytomel. I don't want to use thyroid hormone because I'm going to get really fat when I heard you get really fat when you stop taking it. Well, yeah, when you come off a contest diet and if you start eating like a pig and you don't go to the gym, you're going to get fat. It has nothing to do with stopping the Cytomel. It has to do with the fact that you're just not eating right and you're not training right. So people have 1,000,001 excuses why their bodies change, so drastically. They never want to take inventory of what they're doing or not doing and put the blame on themselves.
Second question, again, these first 2 questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. I know bodybuilding and alcohol don't go hand in hand, but as someone whose mind races and takes something like a couple of beers at night to settle down and be able to fall asleep, I was wondering if there were any alcoholic beverages that you knew of with little to no calories, sugar, etc., the bad stuff.
It's not the calories that are the problem, unless you're dieting for show, obviously. It's the fact that alcohol is toxic to your body, and it puts stress on your liver, and it's not good for muscle gains. Okay, it's like the worst thing you can put into your body when you're trying to be your best as a bodybuilder. You could take, I'd rather you take, to go to sleep at night, take my Somalize, which has the melatonin and GABA in it. I sell a product called Euphoria on my DavePalumbo.com website too. That's like a souped up version of GABA, and you can guys take it during the day, and it just relaxes you. But probably the best way, if you really have high anxiety and you have like a trouble, because your energy level's up here, taking something that's going to knock you out is really not solving the problem. And I know it sounds a little tutti frutti, but meditation, yoga, go on YouTube and Google a 10 or 15-minute meditation video on YouTube and just put headphones on, listen to it on your phone, close your eyes, turn the lights down. And you know what? I guarantee you, when you're done listening to it and breathing like the way they tell you and following the instructions of the meditation, you'll feel like you just took a half a Xanax. I'm telling you, meditation is the best thing if you really got to calm your mind down. If your mind is that off the charts that you have to drink, the 5 shots of alcohol at night, there's a problem. Okay. Now, taking something like Euphoria and meditating will help even more because it'll help your focus a little bit more. But even when you start meditating, it's not easy right away. You have to, you got to get into it. And if you have a lot of thoughts in your head while you're listening to the thing, that's fine. Just kind of push them aside. Let them come and move them, and just let them come and move them. Eventually, you will learn to quiet your mind. I promise you that. And it's the best solution, because if you have to rely on drugs to relax you, ultimately, you're going to have a drug problem because you're going to become taking them all the time. And that's why a lot of people get addicted to drugs. They say, oh, you know what? I'll just take one. Try this half a Xanax. And then they say, oh, that felt so good. You know what? I'll only use it when I need it. And then before you know it, you need it every day. And that's not good.
I'll take questions from our Instagram, YouTube community page, Facebook, other various social media platforms. We've got a bunch of good ones, so let's get right to it. Raw Muscle Glutes always asks great questions. Do you think someone can build a great amateur physique, great muscle, highly muscular body using only test, no other anabolics?
Yeah, I think you can, because I think testosterone is one of the most powerful anabolics you can put into your body. The problem, and here's what I've brought this up innumerable times in the past, is that for some reason, when you mix 2 compounds together, 2 different compounds, testosterone and something else, or 2 anabolics, they have a synergistic effect. We don't really know what causes this synergism, but they really augment each other tremendously. So like if you're going to take 400 milligrams of testosterone versus 200 testosterone, 200 deca, you would think the testosterone would build more muscle because it's a more anabolic. But when you mix 200 with testosterone with 200 deca, you grow infinitely better because there's the synergism. It creates like a cycle effect or a pharmacological effect, if you want to call it that. And you just start adding muscle at a much more accelerated rate. So, having said that, you can build a lot of muscle with just testosterone, but if you add one other compound, even in a small dosage, you're going to augment that process tremendously. Now, some guys can't take anabolics because they're being drug tested or something like that. And that, I understand that. But if it's just a matter of what you're trying to figure out from a health perspective, you're better off doing a little less testosterone and with another anabolic, because you'll get a better anabolic effect out of it. More bang for your buck, so to speak. These questions, I know this one wasn't, but the 2 prior were from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. That's an app I offer. You can download it at the Android store, the iTunes store. It's $29 a month. You get me as your coach in your back pocket. All my videos, all the writings I've ever done in one place, all my protocols, my drug protocols, my keto diet's there. Everything is there. I answer everyone's questions on the app in an open forum, so everyone sees everyone's questions and answers. It's a real good learning experience. I do a Q&A video every single week just for the app members. See, it's like an extra Ask Dave. So it's a really good learning experience. We put up a workout every week. There's a lot of great stuff in there, and I know a lot of people love it. People have been doing it for years. We have constantly new subscribers coming on board, and thank you guys for supporting it, because when you support it, it makes me want to work harder. Thank you.
Question about retatrutide. Your thoughts on it? Would you recommend, or would you consider it for prep for one of your clients?
Yeah, that's like the new GLP-1 agonist on the block. I think it's like 3 drugs in one, whereas the Mounjaro was 2 drugs in one and the Ozempic is 1 drug, but they're all like GLP-1 agonists, and they kind of add to each other's effects. I haven't personally had anyone use the I think it's called retatrutide. I always forget how you pronounce that exactly, but that version is supposed to be the newest, best one. I have a lot of people who use the Mounjaro from TitanMedicalCenter.com. It's, that's the tirzepatide or tirzepatide. And that works tremendously well. It really curbs appetite. It burns fat really well. It controls blood sugar really well. And the new one, I think Titan has the new one too, from what they tell me. So you can check it out there. Because a lot of times it's hard to get from your doctor. And a lot of these pharmacies are out of it because everyone's, wants to lose weight. So if you can't get it or it's too expensive, you go to TitanMedicalCenter.com. You tell them that Dave Palumbo RxMuscle sent you. They're going to give you a great discount. It works well, but you must take a fiber supplement, and a good fiber supplement. And I'm not telling you have to use my Fiberlize, but I recommend using Fiberlize twice a day when you're on any of these GLP-1 agonists, because they do make you constipated. They slow transit time of food through your intestinal tract, which is one way of making you kind of lose your appetite between meals or curb your appetite, but you can get backed up. So you must take a fiber supplement twice a day with this. As long as you follow the directions, nausea shouldn't be a problem, because if you take too much of it, you can get a little nauseous. But if you follow their dosing protocol, you're not going to have any problems. And I think it's a very, very good tool. It's great for people who cheat, people who like to snack between meals. If you have good discipline already and you're really disciplined the way you diet, I don't think it's going to do anything for you. But if you're one of these people that likes to reach into the jar, into the almond jar and steal a few almonds or take a scoop of peanut butter in the middle of the day, it's going to work well for you because it's going to curb that appetite. So I highly recommend. I know we also have a sale. I think.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up right now. It says Titan Radiant Package, designed to support hair growth, skin rejuvenation, and overall radiance. 10% off when you choose 2 or more therapies from the package: GHKCU, injectable biotin, hair capsules, hair foam, and Aphrodite serum. So 10% off when you choose 2 of those packet from the therapies from the package. And of course, as Dave always mentions, when it comes to Titan Medical Center, you mentioned Dave Palumbo RxMuscle, they're going to hook you up.
I haven't personally tried the injectable biotin, but it sounds interesting. I think I'm going to have them send me some of that to give that a whirl. And then I know some of the other therapies a lot of people use. So give it a shot. Tell them we sent you, like I said. And if you want to get some of that, the GLP-1 agonist, you can ask them about that as well. They're very helpful.
Question about aminos. Now he's saying, or his question is, why is not having aminos during a cut prep phase important? Do you cut, or when do you cut aminos from your client's protocol nearing a contest?
Yeah, like off season, I always, you can't have too many, right? More protein, the better type of thing. So when I have guys like working out during the gym, I have them sipping my Amino Evolved or some kind of essential amino acids. During the day, if they're sitting around, like we're doing right here, I might drink some aminos. But when you're dieting, you don't want to, ostensibly, if your coach has figured out your requirements properly, and let's say you're eating 6 meals a day, all the macronutrients that you need for that day is in there. If you start sipping aminos during the day, your body can turn those amino acids into glucose and use it as fuel. So you don't want to do that. You want your body dipping into stored body fat to use that for fuel. So you got to be very careful. There's no free calories while you're dieting. You can't just indiscriminately taking glutamine and taking essential amino acids, branch chain amino acids, because your body can use all of those amino acids. All that stuff is protein, and it can use it as fuel. It can turn it into glucose. You're going to stop a lot of your fat burning. I told you, whenever I help a lot of guys from India, and one of the big things over there, they love to take tons of glutamine, branch chain amino acids. It's like they're powder crazy over there, creatine, and a lot of times I just take that stuff out of their diet, and all of a sudden they start losing weight again. They think it's like I'm a miracle worker or something like that. I'm like, you're just giving your body too much stuff to use for fuel. You can't do that. It's not going to dip into stored body fat unless it feels that it's in a deficit. So if I'm giving you 5 or 6 meals a day already, I'm giving you plenty of food. You're not losing any muscle. Okay. Now the rest of the day, you got to be in a deficit. Every time you get a little hungry, you can't just sip an amino acid, because that's going to sabotage the diet. And once people come to that realization, then they say, I see what I'm doing wrong. And look, we've all fallen into that trap, myself included. So when I was younger, I would do an extra whey protein shake at night because I'd be hungry. And my friend Doug would be like, what are you doing that for? You don't need it. I said, yeah, but more protein. He goes, you're not letting your body dip into that hard to burn fat, which on my body was in my middle back. Most people, it's glutes and hamstrings. My glutes would come in, and then I thought I was in shape. And he's like, no, your middle back is not in shape. And sure enough, if I suffered like another couple of weeks, not having those little extras, all of a sudden I noticed all that detail.
So a little while ago, we had a question about somebody who was trying to settle down at night. You offered the alternative of meditation, right?
Yeah.
I guess mindfulness. So this is a little bit more along the lines of the philosophical route questions from Tyler Smith. How much value do you see in grounding? Also, have you looked much into toe spacing, wearing shoes that allow for space that can allow you to strengthen your feet and improve your all-around movement? I mean, I know you're very big into stretching, into mobility, but grounding, is that something you see or have looked into, and what applications it may have for a bodybuilder?
Yeah. I actually used to sell grounding pads on DavePalumbo.com, believe it or not. I'm a big believer in it. I should get back to it more. The idea is that we walk around with a certain electrical charge in our body. And grounding means that your feet are touching the bare ground. So either the cement ground or the dirt, and your body can discharge all the electricity that it's accumulating over the course of the day. And you can measure that. There's ways to measure how much you got in you. And if you sleep on like the third floor, you're in an apartment complex on the 20th floor, you're never grounding because you're never touching the floor. But if you go that's why they say if you walk on the beach, at the water, that's the best way to ground yourself. That's why you feel so calm. And so what they did was they created pads like that you can put on your bed. Like I remember I used to sell these things. For some reason, they became too expensive and I wasn't making any money doing it. So I stopped doing it. But you it's a pad and it has a little plug that you plug in, not to the regular outlet. You know how like you have like 3 prongs in an outlet? Well, the little round bottom part, it just plugs into that. That's the grounding port, believe it or not. So when you plug in, that bottom portion just grounds the electrical device you're plugging in. It doesn't really offer any electricity. So you plug this little thing just into that little port. And when your legs or wherever it's usually the strip of material on it goes across your bed, and usually your legs lay on it, like your calves. And when your calves touch that, that's plugged into the grounding port. It grounds your body. So even if you're on the 20th or 100th floor of a building, you can ground yourself through that grounding port. And that's the theory behind it. A lot of like all the Tour de France cyclists sleep in these sleeping bags that are grounded. Like the whole body is completely grounded in these bags. And supposedly they can show that performance increases. They can show that cortisol levels are lower. When they test the charge of the body, they can show you're discharged better. So it's a subtle type of effect, but there seems to be a lot of science behind it. Like I said, I got into it for a while. I was really into it because I was selling the grounding pads. I was selling I might even still have some of the books on my Dave Palumbo website. I don't know if we sold out of them, but it's a very interesting. You should go and Google it. It's an interesting read, and it makes sense logically. And there are a lot of I think I was selling the earthing.com because they call it earthing, and there is some serious real science behind it, especially for athletes at an elite level that want to get a little extra edge on people for recovery purposes. I think it's great. When I was bodybuilding, I was doing it for the last half of my career. Like I said, I haven't done it in a while, but I've been moving around a lot. So maybe I'll get back to it because there is some solid science behind it. Now, the other thing you asked me about was, what was the other question, Sid?
Okay. Have you looked into like toe spacing and wearing shoes that allow for space that can allow you to strengthen your feet? Ben
Pekulski and I got into this discussion about 10 years ago, and he was, a big believer in those, those shoes where it looks like they
are like gloves.
fingers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And he said, it's important because you strengthen the bottom of your foot. My problem is that, and a lot of guys have the same problem I do, especially athletes for some reason, a lot of athletes with flat feet, which means that the arch in your foot that is normally supported by not muscle, but by a tendon is just genetically is just not there, or it's overstretched. So you have what's called a flat foot as opposed to an arch foot. So for people like us, especially when you get heavy as a bodybuilder, over 250 pounds, you got to get what's called orthotics for your shoes. So the orthotics creates an arch and it corrects the arch deficit that you have, so that when you walk around these things in your shoes, it's like you have a normal arch. And when you do your leg workouts and just when you're walking around on a daily basis, you're using the right muscle groups. Because if you have no arch, what happens is you're not using the right muscle groups. You get strains in your knee, your lower back, I was getting groin strains back in the day. So for me, I can't wear those. Me strengthening my feet, my toes and the muscles of my feet is not going to fix the fact that I have no arch support. And that's the same case with any bodybuilder that has flat feet or has a fallen arch. You can't fix it by strengthening the muscles in your foot. because it's not a muscular thing. It's a connective tissue issue. A matter of fact, when I had about 2 years ago, when I had my ankle fused, the reason I had it fused is because my lack of arch got so bad that the bones actually collapsed on the bottom of my foot, and they weren't even supporting my ankle properly. And so I had to have like an artificial, they had to actually fuse those bones to create an arch for me in that foot. And I still wear orthotics in that shoe. So, some people just don't have good feet. Other people, have great feet and they can get away with it. But I think that most bodybuilders, like I said, that are over, 240, 250, all can benefit. I think everyone can benefit from wearing orthotics. I'm not a big believer in doing anything barefoot or wearing those shoes. Maybe if you're a gymnast, that's a different story, but not for bodybuilding. For bodybuilding, we need biomechanics. That's number one importance, is the biomechanics of your feet and how the rest of your body is aligned. So when you're training, you're using the right muscle groups. Because if you're not, you're using accessory muscle groups that are not supposed to be doing the movements, and they don't get big. So a lot of guys who have problems with building like adductors and glutes of their legs is because they're falling forward and their quads are doing all the work, because they can't sit back on their heels when they're doing squats or leg presses because they have an arch deficit. So big believer, go to your podiatrist, go to your local chiropractor, have them make you a custom pair of orthotics, change them every 2.5, 3 years, and make sure you put them in a new pair of shoes. And I'm telling you, you'll thank me for it.
Question about your carb rotation diet, which again is available on the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Do you recommend carb rotation diet if you want to lean out, specifically while bulking?
Yeah, I think most people should start on a diet that's some carbs. There are people who come to me, they have to lose a lot of weight, men and women. They're like, look, I don't want this to take a year. I know I have a lot of weight to lose. Give me the best, most efficient diet that you think I'm going to be able to stick to. And I usually put them right onto a ketogenic diet in that case, because the ketogenic diet is obviously going to work very quickly because it's low carbs. It's virtually no carbs, essentially, right? Your body, but your brain is in ketosis, so you feel good on the diet. You don't feel hungry. If I have to put an overweight person on a low carb diet, they can still lose weight, but they're going to be hungry during the day, because in between meals, their blood sugar is going to drop. When you're on a ketogenic diet, the blood sugar levels are stable because your brain is using fats as fuel. So it's a better option, and I think that's important. So, but for most bodybuilders, we're starting their diet 18 weeks out from a show. I start them on, some days they have carbs, some days they don't, but most of the days they do. And then I alter the diet as the weeks progress, depending on their progress. If they're losing weight, eating carbs, then I don't take it out. If they're not, I cut back some of the carb days. We do more protein fat days. In some cases we do go full ketogenic diet. A lot of times I never do, so it really depends on the person I'm working with and how their body progresses. With women do very well on ketogenic diets. They like the way they feel on it. They're never bloated. It's a very good diet for them mentally and physically, works really well.
We'll take one more question. This about Jay Cutler and carb intake. I've always heard everyone talk about eating, say, 1,000 grams of carbs. Jay Cutler talks about eating 1,000 grams of carbs on prep. This confuses me. 1,000 grams of cooked rice on a scale is actually 280 grams of carbs. Are they talking about 1,000 grams of carbs on a scale, or 1,000 grams of actual carbs?
No, they're talking about 1,000 grams of actual carbohydrates, which is an enormous amount of carbohydrates. And for most people, they can never metabolize that in the course of a day. But Jay Cutler is not your average guy, right? He's a 4-time Mr. Olympia, 3-time Arnold Classic champ. He's a genetic freak. I'm sure even I didn't eat that many. I would eat that many grams of carbs on an off season, but I wouldn't eat it. I wouldn't eat that much pre-contest. I'm not a good carb burner. I'm good, but I'm not great like that. And a lot of times guys have to do that because they don't eat enough fat in their diet. So they'll compensate with carbs. So in other words, maybe if I didn't eat all the fat I ate, I could have eaten that many carbs, but I would have looked terrible, because if my body doesn't get enough essential fat and fats in the diet, it doesn't matter how many grams of carbs I eat. I look flat as can be. So for me, I found that more fats, less carbs worked better. Jay was an easy gainer, hard loser, essentially. So yeah, he did better on higher carbs, because it seemed like it stimulated his metabolism. And, I think toward the end of his career, his metabolism was way better than early on. I'm sure early on he wasn't eating a ton of carbs, but maybe he was. I don't know. Everyone's metabolism is different. The worst thing you can do is listen to a genetic freak. Like, don't ask Dexter Jackson what he ate for his diet, because Dexter had a crazy metabolism. Don't ask guys that, that have it, like Matt Grego, Chris has to give him a burger and fries every day. And he doesn't do cardio. if you copy what he does, you're going to be a fat slob. So never ask a genetically gifted person what they do. You want to find out what the average person needs to do to get in the best shape of their life. So yes, did Jay Cutler do 1,000 grams of carbs? He probably did, but he's not the average guy.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder right now on the channel, all new episode of Heavy Muscle Radio, all new episode of the After Hours podcast. Of course, this past weekend was the Arnold South America, which saw a good Vito not only win, dominate, but really announce himself to the world as a viable threat in the upcoming Pittsburgh Pro. Pittsburgh Pro about 4.5 weeks away. Dave and I will be there. We will provide wall-to-wall coverage. Very excited about that. So again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss anything that we have coming up on this channel. If you like what you're watching, hit the likes up, comment below. And as always, we appreciate all of your support. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.